Pastor Paul Begley. It is I.
It is I. It is Mike from around the world. How are you, my brother?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, Mike, and I want to thank you once again for coming on and being with us tonight. A lot going on.
Yes, it is.
Mike, wow. Everybody wants to talk about the 5 waves of energy and what we're going to look for here in the future, the next few months maybe. But before I get there, we've got issues taking place everywhere. And I'm going to ask you about Israel tonight. The fires are burning from the northern part of Israel to the southern part of Israel. There's multiple, dozens of fires breaking out simultaneously. Now, the Western media is saying that it's global warming, that it's a heat wave in Israel. It's 101 degrees, and it was a spontaneous combustion of fire. But I've seen footage. I've seen incendiary balloons and kites. So just trying to get an understanding, what is your understanding of what's taking place there?
Well, as of late, with America, Israel has taken center stage as being target number one of the Middle East. And so naturally, with some of the pushback of those opposition nations, they're going to have issues like that. They're going to have problems with Iran. Iran is deeply embedded throughout the Middle East. Its headquarters, Iran's headquarters, ironically, is not in Iran. I'll just say that. So if Iran comes under heavy fire, it's not going to get rid of the tactical brain of Iran, not in the least, but they're spread out all over the place. Now we have to remember that Iran is supported by Russia. So what we have is an arms buildup, tactical movements, small groups positioning themselves in various different places, and a declaration from the Middle East was also that happened last week, with some of the pushback from America towards Iran, some of the buildup towards Iran, and so they're reacting. Right? It's the old adage: if you push a dog, if you corner a wild animal, they're going to do whatever it takes to come out of that corner, right? And so that's what they're doing. I wouldn't necessarily say. I would say this. I would say that if somebody were to start a fire in Israel, right, then due to the temperatures, of course, due to a lack of rain, right, of course, it's going to burn better than it would in other conditions. But global warming does not start fires like that, right? Not like that. Israel is always hot this time of the year. What makes this year different than any other year? In fact, there are places hotter than Israel over there, right? So, but there are some movements. They're going to have to defend themselves, and we all know. I know. My anchor being prophecy. You know what the real deal is. I mean, everybody knows what the real deal is, but these things are going to increase, unfortunately. And one of the bad parts is there's no clear line as to who is who. And Israel has enemies on the inside, right? So you really don't know. Somebody's coordinating things here. Somebody's coordinating things. And it just so happened these fires started outside of the natural reach of their response forces that would put out the fires and everything else. I found that if you look at a map at some of the fires, and then you look at the positioning of the forces that respond to those fires, you're going to find out that they are in these areas that can cause trouble to these remote places, but are right outside of the reach of those who would respond to fires. You are
so right, Mike. We're showing a map right now of a couple dozen fires that are burning throughout Israel, and they're outside of the reach of Jerusalem. They're outside the reach of Tel Aviv, where your major emergency response units are. They're spread out. Now, there is some small communities that are engulfed in flames, houses, buildings, but they couldn't handle this kind of a thing. And it happened, Mike, simultaneously. I mean, obviously this looks like arson. I mean, all the Israeli media is saying that it's arson attack, but Western media is continuing this line. I can't believe after 8 hours they're still talking about global warming and heat waves.
Well, of course, they're going to spin the story because of recent events in the White House. because the war that we have in the White House between Democrats and Republicans and hardliners and so on and so forth. So they're always going to take that news, not give credit to the Republican Party, saying that they have identified a threat in the Middle East, because remember, the Democrats attempted to minimize any threats in the Middle East. And the Republicans, well, they don't see it that way. So, of course, they're going to minimize that, saying it's global warming. So in this case, I hate to say it, Western media in this instance, well, they're not good to listen to. But the Middle East, those individuals whose homes have been burnt, whose communities have been burnt up, and they just so happen to be those remote communities in which those response teams couldn't get to in time to put the fires out, well, something is going on. That's beyond coincidence, as well beyond coincidence there.
Do you see, and we're going to move on to other subjects, but speaking about Iran for a moment, Iran is everywhere. You made a great observation that they have outposts all over the Middle East. So as they're being tightened down, we've got the USS Abraham Lincoln. I don't want to get into some things that would get, I want you to, I just want to ask a couple questions. We're down there with a couple aircraft carriers and striker groups. We have not moved toward the Straits of Hormuz. We've stayed back. Are we concerned of booby traps? Are we concerned of little speedboat attacks? Or is Iran stronger than what we're giving them credit for?
Well, to be short, yes, they are. And so it makes it very unpredictable. Iran is a place that you really can't capture accurate intelligence on except you follow money. And when you follow money and you have intelligence about trades with Russia and other countries, then you find out what's going on in Iran. Remember, all the top scientists, the same scientists that work in Switzerland, also worked in Iran. So it's very difficult to tell what they have really developed. Yeah, they had scientists from all over the world that were working in Iran prior to Obama's administration. They had, in fact, at the end of Bush's term, it was found that they had scientists, the top minds from all over the world, working in Iran. So, and that was underground. And it's very difficult to tell exactly what's underground, because you can have the thermal signatures or radiation signatures that pinpoint certain facilities, but you cannot pinpoint any mainframes or anything like that underneath the ground. Most of Saddam Hussein's infrastructure was underground, and it's still there to this very day. Most of Iran's infrastructure is underground.
Are you also hinting that maybe Iran was involved in CERN? That you're talking about some of these bright scientists may have been in Switzerland? Are you saying CERN?
Well, there are. You have to remember, Iran is. We have a scientific Congress that will govern ethics and things of that nature. Iran is not like that. So if something were totally unethical, Iran could get away with this. Okay, and they have gotten away with quite a few things. They also don't have limitations because they don't use propaganda on their people regarding science, and people just don't know. They accept what they get. So underground, you can develop what you want, and the public, because they have the public under control, the public's not going to cry for somebody's head saying that you're developing secret things, we need to know about it. They wouldn't dare say that in Iran. The people of Iran are not like us. If we were to do that, and the reason why America has to hide so much is because if the people found out due to laws that are established, we would call for the heads of people, saying that that's unnecessary, that's unethical. But in Iran, you have a different story. You're not dealing with limitations of ethics. You're not dealing with limitations of secrecy. You're not worried about the populace finding out this, that, and the other, because they're simply not going to talk. So they can develop, and have developed, some pretty interesting things. I'll give you an example. How in the world do they have the computational resources and some of the developmental resources to actually send a craft to the moon right now? How does that happen? How did that happen?
Iran?
Yes. See, it was said that they didn't have the guidance system, but you have to remember some of the reports. They took down a drone almost without a scratch, and they copied the technology. And in fact, they demonstrated that they copied the technology by sending out drones that evaded our fighters. How did they do that? So somebody is in Iran that's an incredible think tank. And I hate to say this, but most of the tech. Who do you think is the smartest? Let's just say technological originators in this world. What nation would you say?
Well, I would say Israel. I would say Israel.
It is Israel. It is Israel. Yeah. Specifically, these Iranians, those Persians, right, who have adopted things in Israel, right? They have created so much of the technology we have today. And when you start looking at who developed what, who invented what, you're going to begin to find out that a lot of the knowledge comes from the Middle East. That's what you'll find out. Okay. You take, for example, Hitler. What did Hitler do? Hitler went all over the place, right? And he essentially raided all the artifacts and all the technology from these different nations is what he did. And he began to recreate them, right? So you're looking at two specific think tanks there. You're looking at Iran and India, right? Probably why most of the doctors are from India, because they're very... they just have a capacity for learning. Let's put it that way. They don't, because of their society, they don't think like we do, right? We can be the same way, but we have too many luxuries, right? We're not desperate enough to apply our minds that way.
Yeah, we're not hungry.
They are desperate enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So your point is, and I think it's a great point. I mean, Israel is certainly the greatest scientists of the world have come out of Israel. But to your point, Iranians, look, Persia controlled Israel for 400 years. The Persian Empire ruled Israel for 400 years. You pick some stuff up along the way when you do that, including some the initiative, if you will, the intellectual initiative, intellectual proprietary information, even though it might have been 1917 when the Persian Empire finally, that was when they finally had, the Ottoman Empire left in 1917, the Persians left before that. But still, they ruled for 400 years, and so they understand how to think in an innovative way. So I think you bring out a great point. Let's don't underestimate the Iranians' capabilities. And they got this Salami, this Major General Salami. He is one slick character. He's a dangerous guy, and you brought that up last week. And so he's crafty, and he might be behind this whole thing if this is what's going on. Incendiary kites and balloons simultaneously outside the reach of the Israeli help. Okay, we got to move on, Mike. Oh, just one more thing. Locusts is in Iran and in Saudi Arabia. It's the worst locust outbreak since the plagues of Egypt. Water turned blood red off the coast of the Hormuz Island. Unbelievable. It's not algae. It's not red tide. They're still trying to figure out what's causing that. Israel's on fire. It's like the plagues have returned right now. It seems to be as if there's signs of the end times are manifesting on the planet. Now, we've got people asking a question here, Mike, and that is the waves of energy. You know, we know we've had the 3 waves. We know that there's ripples, and there's scientific information coming out. And matter of fact, just last week, NASA came out and said that the moon is shrinking, that it's collapsing internally, that it's shrinking like a grape, and that this is going to affect the speed and rotation of the Earth. Is this from, I'm just got 2 questions. Number 1, is the moon, NASA says it's shrinking. I've talked about it. It's in the papers everywhere now because I said it was a sign because of the scriptures. But is Nibiru, you keep saying the waves of energy is affecting the core of the Earth. Is the waves of energy affecting the core of the moon?
I'd say it's affecting everything. As far as the moon goes, it's so, there's information on the moon, right? There's people have information on the moon. However, due to what people have been trained to think, even if you were to say some of the things that have been held back as far as the makeup of the moon, it will go through one ear and out of the other. It's very hard to retain because we've been so with repetitious training to believe that the moon is a non-subject, right? But in fact, the moon is an anchor of the Earth. And so let me give you an idea of something. We know about tides, right? We know about tides.
Yeah.
That's an effect of the moon. So we know that tides are important as far as the shape of the Earth goes, right?
Yes.
If the moon were to lose its pull, or somehow the moon were to become dense and increase its gravitational pull, we would have an issue. What we would have is a warping of the Earth in regions of the Earth that have never been warped before. And so we would have all the oceans changing in height, right? Somebody asked me today, they said, why is the ocean rising in certain places and it's all but gone in other places? Why are new oceans being formed in countries like Africa? Why is the land all of a sudden letting in seawater? Why is there saltwater intrusion taking place in areas where it shouldn't? In America also. And what you have is an effect that things are actually beginning to go out of order. So those powers that held the moon and the earth system, the earth and the sun system, the solar system, and the galaxy in place, they're all starting to shift and change.
There was a great white shark that was just captured off the coast of New York, just off the coast, just not far from Long Island. I mean, are you serious? A great white shark? It's like it's way out of whack where it's supposed to be. What is this? What you're talking about? Things are out of order.
Water temperature, salinity, and magnetics. The magnetic field are going to affect sea life. Period. They normally travel with the currents, but there's a disruption with the currents in the oceans. So then you have your natural water flows in the ocean that have shifted also. Right? Now, back to the moon again, Pastor Paul. Around the rim of the earth, there is hundreds of feet high, right? The water rises hundreds of feet high around the equator. It's not inhabitable in the oceans around the equator, right?
Right.
But the water rises hundreds of feet. If the moon shifts, guess what? That rim is going to change positions. So by the moon shrinking it doesn't have to shrink a lot. Okay. It just needs to change 0.05%. 0.05% gravitational change would throw off that lip around the earth full of water, and that water would shift. Now, what would happen if all that water began to decrease in altitude? What you would have is a rising in the waters without warning all over the face of the earth.
No! I mean, and
that's what you would have.
Is that because is that a pole shift then? Is that what happens?
No, that's not a pole shift. Now, see, this is what makes it so. These things, what I'm about to say, has nothing to do with the pole shift. Has nothing to do with Earth, being hit by meteorites, but it has to do with destruction. And so, let me name it, because the sheer volume of water going around the rim of the Earth is enough to equate to at least 1/4 of the oceans. Okay? If that rim drops 50 feet, all the oceans of the world will begin to come inland. Right? Without warning.
Yeah, it would.
Without warning, no indication, no anything. Yeah. And so, with the changes in the moon and with the changes in our location orbiting around the sun, these things are shifting and changing and altering. The Earth is warped anyway. It's like a water balloon, right? The centrifugal force and inertia keep the water at bay. But if that changes just a little bit, well, then we have a problem. And we're going to have a problem because the indication, some of the charts are indicating that at an exponential pace, the waters are beginning to collapse around the rim of the Earth.
Now, Mike, so what you're saying was actually some of what Stephen Ben-Hanun revealed in that conference in Cincinnati. But of course, he was trying to explain it. He was getting it off that special little green file we got from the NASA scientists and these astronomers and different people. He kept talking about the elevation of the water in the equator, when it starts to go down, it's going to spread out across landmass.
Yes.
Folks, Brock, would you tell people how they can they got to get this thing? It's coming in the mail here any day now. We're going to ship it immediately. Folks, just go to our website. Brock's going to put it there real quick. If you haven't got yours ordered, you want to pre-order it. The heavens are shaking. Get this 4 DVD set. Get this 4 DVD set. Go to our website right now. Go to publiclyprophecy.com and click on it. Add that to right now. You get 4. It's 4 hours. Okay, each DVD is about an hour, and get it, because there's tremendous information, especially John Moore, Stephen Ben Noon, and Clyde Lewis. These guys really brought some key stuff. I pulled it all together and tied it into the biblical prophecy. All right, so Mike, by the way, there's 2,600 people here right now on YouTube. If you guys would all put a thumbs up right now, you'll drive the algorithms up as Mike is here. I think we need a couple thousand more people to show up. That's how important it is right now live to hear what Mike is saying, because he's truly giving us the info that we need. And I didn't know about this moon situation until this week. Mike, is there a slow disclosure going on here? Because can I say something to you? Besides the moon, they also announced this week gravitational waves are bringing dust.
Yes.
You said that 6 years ago, Mike. Yes. 6 years ago, and I kept waiting for someone else to confirm it. You're the only one. You're the only one. So everybody's pushing the thumbs up. I'm going to be quiet. Mike, tell us. Tell us about the moon, and then tell us about the dust.
Okay. Going towards this, some of the events that are happening. I want to say one thing first, though, Pastor Paul. Let me say this first. In the Bible, the Lord said that the earth would never be destroyed by water again. Ladies and gentlemen, the ocean shifting out of the basins is not destroying the planet by water. That only means certain continents will be destroyed by water, not all. Okay. So we have to make that point clear, because in the minds of a believer, that to believe the earth is going to be destroyed by water would be a misnomer. But we are going to have countries in trouble, and people are going to have water in their backyards. Okay, so that's something that will happen sooner than later. As far as some of the inbound particles that are coming in, it is by instrumentation. The readings are changing, and what I mean by that is that we're entering, this whole solar system is in motion, and we're entering into a different part of the galaxy, a part that's very old and ancient. Let's put it that way. As we enter into this part of the galaxy, we're going to experience brand new things, right? These pulses that keep shooting out seem to be tied to us, because in fact, and this is what I'm waiting for the rest of the data so I can chart something out, because I'm still missing it. In the geological rock, in the rocks and the crystals and everything else, there's a record. The record indicates that there have been steady pulses over the course of time that have come in and really wreaked havoc upon the earth. Steady pulses. Now, those steady pulses would likely imply that we have an object or a system out there that's a twin system of ours that comes in close, in proximity to us every so often, right? Every so often. So it's a cyclical event. But what I have noticed by that record is that it's not a constant, meaning it could be close one cycle and a little bit different the next cycle, but the effects are the same. And it's so bad because you can read radiation, magnetism, and all these things, and the chemistry changes in the atmosphere and in the earth through geology. But one thing is noticed is that you're having the same readings of radiation each and every time. So high doses of a type of radiation are hitting this earth on a cyclical. It's just cyclical. It happens, then it goes away, just like the four seasons. Well, it turns out that we have larger seasons, something unavoidable, something that our generations have not undergone yet. And so this generation could be the one, it likely is the one, that will encounter the beginnings of this. I don't believe that all of us will, I don't believe that everybody will live through it in the end. I believe there will be some people, but I do believe it's going to wreak havoc upon the earth, and we're seeing the onset of those changes.
So looking at it from a biblical standpoint real quick, Mike, when the Bible says, that there's going to be massive cataclysmic events and about a third of the world will die, some of this is going to happen because of numerous events: tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanoes, water, sea rising, chaos, famine, pestilence, disease. And that's all because it sounds like this event that's coming triggers all this stuff. And like you said, not everybody lives through it all. And we're not talking. Look, we know the Lord's coming back, but we got to get realistic here. There's some things it's in play, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah, it's happening already. It's likened. You can liken this to suppose like those people in the Midwest, right? They buy homes in the Midwest. People have homes out there every summer. Every time the seasons change, you have tornadoes. So just imagine that every year the season of tornadoes lasted longer and came more frequently. And it kept coming and kept coming and kept coming until one day they didn't leave. Just imagine that. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at events that have a slow buildup, indications, right, that we're seeing more and more by way of frequency until they begin to destroy this planet, right? So I have to say this with the Lord. He truly does use the foolish things of this world to confound the wise, and he uses the weak things of this world to destroy the mighty. So you're looking at these storms that are escalating by way of their frequency, which means we keep having them. Look at the water. You know, what was it? 6 years ago, I was talking about fires and floods. And we're going to deal with droughts and floods.
Yeah,
droughts and floods at the same time.
You
right?
did, yes.
So now we occupy time where if it's not raining and flooding people out, it's dry to the bone. And if it's not dry to the bone, it's flooding people out. And so we're having this all over the earth, but the frequency is increasing. And also the wind speeds are inching up. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
The normal winds with these storms are creeping up. They're creeping up until they're going to reach a point. Now, when the Bible says we're going to have a certain, take 75-pound hail, all right? Now, if you do the mathematics behind the formation of hail, you know it takes 200-mile-an-hour winds to support 200-pound hail or a 75-pound hail. You just can't have 75-pound hail dropping out of the sky without an updraft that's strong enough to keep it up there long enough for it to grow and then fall. And so it takes 200-mile-an-hour winds, right,
and what you're
to support
saying,
that.
What you're saying is what John Moore said at that Cincinnati conference. He said that the updraft is going to increase because the jet stream is being pushed down. It's going to create an updraft and a more evaporation, which then will turn into larger hailstorms and more frequent hailstorms and more violent lightning strikes. And I've heard you say this, that this is a part, and I understand now, I didn't know this, but the Gulf Stream itself stopped on June 12th, 2010. We don't have a Gulf Stream anymore. It's over. It ended. And this is affecting maybe the animals and the plant, and the dolphins and the whales and stuff is washed up on the shore. We got 8 million dead salmon in Norway tonight. We've got locusts, 20 times amount of locusts than we've ever seen in the history of the world tonight in the Middle East. We've got asteroids racing by us. Apophis is on the way. And Mike, so are these ripples, these waves of energy? I mean, when's the fourth one, Mike? What do I need to look for between the third one and the fourth one? When's it coming? What am I going to do?
Well, you still know we're in this one. Still on this. And let me give you an idea of what's been building here. Now, we haven't had any big volcanic eruptions associated with any large earthquakes. We haven't had that. We've had the small ones, but they're not enough. There's too much pressure in the earth. We have another problem now. Water is going into the lands of the earth, and they're not going back out into the atmosphere. They're being evaporated. What we're talking about is we're missing whole lakes on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
They're just gone. They're missing.
Yeah.
Okay? And we have waterways that were once there. For years they stayed around and they're gone.
Yeah.
We're having water levels totally drop off. We're having fish disappearing out of lakes. How do fish disappear? And so what we have here is we have little openings in the earth, right, that are absorbing the water, but it's so hot below the surface of the earth, they're just going away. The gas companies are having a problem with their piping of that gas underneath the earth. We've got a severe problem because the heat in the earth is rising, right?
Yeah.
That pressure's building. So what we know about that pressure is this: it's going to find a way to come out just like a pressure cooker. And because we have not had relief points, we need some more earthquakes and some more volcanic eruptions, at least some small ones, to relieve that pressure, but we have not had that, right? We had Kilauea, we had other volcanoes. So what we're looking at is some of the old volcanoes that have been dormant for a long time. They're starting to awaken. They're really starting to awaken. Places like Guam, places like the Philippines, all those places around there, places in even Italy. Italy had a problem on their runways. They actually had a lot of carbon coming up from the ground. And they still have that problem in various places in Italy right now. So there's something waking up in Italy underneath the land and underneath the waters. So we have an issue there, right?
You've been worried.
We have an issue.
Yeah, you've been real worried about Italy now for some time now because there's some kind of a, I don't know if it's a major fault line or the volcanic ridge. You keep talking about these 13 different volcanic opportunities or openings along the California West Coast line, and you keep talking about Italy. I mean, which one are you concerned more about, California or
Italy is bad. Italy can do the most damage because Italy can cause a dislodging of water that will basically begin to overtake most of the coastlines on the planet. So, and that's why Italy is so dangerous. There's a monster that resides below Italy, right? A monster, and it's starting to wake up, starting to have activity. It is huge. It makes Yellowstone look like nothing, is what it makes Yellowstone look like. Yellowstone would be comparable to Mount St. Helens compared to it, but that would be a good comparison. What? So it is huge. It is giant, right? And what they normally do is, of course, they're not going to publish a bunch of, to say that we have volcanoes larger, much larger than Yellowstone, right? If something gets too much media attention, how in the world can it be dangerous? Right? Because part of national defense is never to reveal a story or give it credence or credit that could truly, and that will truly, one day harm the people, because you don't want to frighten people that way. That's why they don't talk about Tomomachi. That's why they don't talk about what's underneath New York. That's why they don't talk about Italy, right?
Rome?
Unless somebody else tells it, then they come out with a cover story.
Will this blow right? Rome? Is this thing running underneath Rome?
That will end Rome. That will really end Rome. But due to the size of it, you're looking at something that won't. It's not going to really blow upward and out. You're looking at something that will just begin to spew lava all over the place, right? And then it will cause shocks underneath the ocean, because you're dealing with a lot of water. When water hits heat, you have explosions, and so that will begin to dislodge things in the ocean. But you're just looking at lava coming and pouring out all over the place, right? We all know biblically that everything is going to pass away with a fervent heat anyway. So we know that underneath the crust of this earth is a time bomb that God He controls. It is His creation. He determines these things. We need not worry about it because so long as we have Christ Jesus, we're okay. We're fine. We don't have to worry about the fallout that other folks do. But if we have these things in mind, because I have the strongest feeling that we're going to begin to see many of these things, not just a few, but many, and that they're going to begin to take their toll and really worry people. I can tell you a day's coming where no one will ever use that word fearmonger. They will never, ever do it, because they're going to be standing in the middle of an issue and a problem. Now, the saints who have learned to trust in the Lord with all of what they are, they're going to be pillars of strength for those around them, even in troubled times. Amen. But those who ignored it, those who trusted in science, those who listened to the voices that said, don't worry, go watch television, they're going to be in trouble, because they're not going to be mentally prepared. They're not going to be spiritually prepared. They're not going to be prepared at all. And they're going to be the first ones to turn violent and try to steal everybody's resources because they were caught off guard.
They're afraid.
They're going to try and kill themselves.
So, Mike,
they're going to perceive the situation real bad.
You're saying because they're going to be afraid. They're going to be operating in fear, and they will turn violent because of self-preservation, where we, the redeemed, we're going to be walking in faith, trusting in the Lord, because the Lord said He would supply every need according to His riches and glory in Christ Jesus. He said He would, He would take care of us. He would lead us into the paths of look, He said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for Thou art with me. Thy rod, Thy staff will comfort me. In other words, what you're saying, Mike, people need to be aware of prophecy. They need to be aware of the events that's happening around the world. They need to be focused on it and not be afraid, but understand that Christ is coming. And until He comes, we're going to occupy. We're going to go forward. We're going to share the good news of Jesus Christ. Folks, right now, there's 3,000 people here right now. Would everybody, if you have not put a thumbs up, if you haven't put the thumbs up, do it right now. Hit the like button. Drive the algorithms up. If you have not ordered your Heavens Are Shaking DVD from Cincinnati, I'm going to beg you to do it, because the information is more. We can't just unload it on you. Mike has been coming on these shows for the last 6 years periodically, and he told us things 6 years ago that is coming to pass right now. People laughed. People thought it was phony. Everybody, people, it's fake. Oh, no, not saying that no more. Because the very things he said is now being revealed. There's a disclosure taking place, but it's a soft one, folks. The dangers are out there, Mike. You know this, aren't they?
Yeah, they are, and they're running out of time because that time has come where they won't be able to cover these things up. From spiritual things, Pastor Paul, to these physical happenings in the heavens, they're going to have to give the people something. Let me say one more thing too. Let me tell you what it's comparable like to know what prophecy is. If a person knows prophecy, when these things begin to happen, a Christian will say, "Oh, the Lord had me to know this. Thank you, Lord," and they'll walk through that trouble. Right? But the person who does not know is going to have a heart attack or drag plenty of people down with them. They're not going to know where they are. But the problem is, the Lord already said it. It's going to take people by surprise, that they will not be aware. You know what that means? That means my timeline is wrong. That means scientific timelines are wrong. That means ballooning the figures to 1,000,000 years in the future is foolishness, because we don't have that much time, right? Even in Revelation, it said the time is at hand. And it said, "Blessed is he that reads the words of this prophecy," which means that word is relevant to all of us. And we've had a whole lifetime to prepare for this. None of us can say we didn't have enough time because we had, Pastor Paul, the events that will take place are somewhat brutal, meaning they're going to come without warning. They're happening already. People right now, all over the earth are losing their homes left and right, not due to a mortgage, but due to natural disasters.
You're right.
The tornadoes. The insurance companies have an issue, Pastor Paul. When these troubles rise, I don't know if people have taken this into account, but when these troubles rise, and as they begin to take down more and more people's property, well, how's the insurance companies going to pay for that? How are they going to get their homes back? The truth is they're not, and when they don't get their homes back, they're going to be stuck. That's what's going to happen to them. It's coming. They cannot cover damage on a large scale. They just simply can't do that. And when it happens back to back, can you imagine it?
You said it. I mean, 2017 and 2018, California, massive wildfires. Last year, 20,000 homes completely went up in flames in California. This year, Nebraska, unprecedented flooding, destroying homes. Just this week, Oklahoma, massive flooding. We've had 171 tornadoes in the last 6 days. Tonight, more will break out. Tomorrow, more are predicted. And then we're not even into the hurricane season. Matter of fact, earlier this week, the first hurricane has already been spotted. It's 6 weeks early. As you said, the seasons will go longer. You know what the Bible said? That we will get to a point we won't even be able to recognize the seasons, because they're going to be just like they're going to be unending. The worst drought in the history of Australia is going on right now. And there is concern with the food in Iran and Saudi Arabia. The locust is devouring the food supply there, as well as Jordan. Jordan has got their Air Force out there spraying the locusts, trying to kill the locusts, and the locusts act as if they're immune to it. It's like it's mutation. And I mean, we've already got all kinds of issues everywhere. You can't keep up with it, folks. The Lake Huron is 45 feet more shallower than it was 10 years ago. The Euphrates River's 85% dried up, which was prophesied in the Bible. Mike, the waves of energy. Tell me, you're saying we're still in wave number 3, but what does it mean? I mean, is wave number 3 going to wreck us? Will there be
we're going to have more and more magnetic problems with the magnetosphere. We're going to have severe problems with the magnetosphere with this one. I'm going to say this again to everybody. When people see auroras, right? Yeah. In states like Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Idaho, Wyoming, Nevada, all the states, when they start seeing auroras, right, in places where they shouldn't be, you know what that means? That means something has happened to the North and the South Pole. Now, if you can remember that term, the North and the South Pole, right, in history, they were often worshipped. Do you know that? The auroras were worshipped as individuals. I'm going to give you a freebie here. Here's a freebie. They were worshipped as individuals. Now, a long time ago, they witnessed something. They witnessed something over and over again. What they witnessed is coming back, and it has to do with the magnetosphere. Now, if the magnetosphere begins to collapse in certain areas, not the whole thing, but to collapse in certain areas. Right now, it's gone down 16% since the 80s. 16%, that's a huge percentage with magnetics. Let me tell you what that means. That means the cancer rate will go up in proportion to that decrease. But right now, it's fluctuating and decreasing exponentially. Something is happening to the inside of the earth. The dynamo of the earth is theorized. We don't know if that's fact or not. But the one thing we do know is that the magnetic field of the earth can be interrupted from the crust of the earth. We know that with CERN. So then the generation of the magnetic field is taking place from inside the planet. But something is happening inside the planet. Now, if we do have a molten core that's been rotating all this time, just like the sun, the chemistry in the sun is changing. So is the chemistry in the molten core. Pastor Paul, how do you recharge a molten core? Does anybody know that process? The way it has to recharge is that it has to slow down and solidify in certain areas. It has to build up more material to melt again, to be functional again. You know what that means? A partial collapse of the magnetosphere. And what does that mean? That means on a day like today, when we have no CMEs and no solar flares, part of the earth and pieces of the earth and cities in the earth can be fried in less than 2 minutes from the standard solar winds that are blowing, the soft solar winds that blow. They can burn the earth up. That means we're going to have a problem with the atmosphere. We're going to have severe changes in the atmosphere. But how do you know when this thing is coming? You'll know it by the auroras. When you see auroras on a nightly basis in places where they shouldn't be, without a CME, without a solar flare, without a geomagnetic storm, that means something in the core of our Earth has changed to the point where the poles of the auroras have been disrupted. And you're going to have auroras all over the place. And when you see that, don't sit out there taking pictures saying that's pretty. That's when you really prepare your mind and your heart for the inevitable, because it will be the inevitable. And that's a sign, that's a clear indication that something has gone absolutely wrong within the earth. And at that time, when you see these auroras, the modeling is saying the same thing all the time, and I've said this tons of times. And the earth will eventually change its rotation. And when it changes its rotation, there's going to come a time when it has to stop. Now, it's so funny because when it stops, there goes the waters again. We won't escape the water troubles. And then it goes back in the other direction. Well, that's going to be a change in all weather, which our infrastructure, nobody's infrastructure can withstand that. So that means consolidation and quite a bit of ruin in several places. Now, how long does this process last? Not long at all. We see the onsets of it already, unfortunately. And people will see them. You'll see them soon enough. Everybody's going to see them soon enough. You won't have to read reports. Nobody's going to have to say, well, that's fear-mongering, because they're going to be standing in the middle of it. But at least those people out there will have an interpretation of what's going on. They'll say, hey, we're okay, right? We know what's coming. We know exactly what to pray for. The Lord's going to watch over us anyway, because we belong to Him and we trust in Him. Right? But what does it say in the Bible? That the wrath of the Lord is a result of the meek of the earth. The meek of the earth have wrought the wrath of the Lord upon the earth. So then those who are meek, who really belong to the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, Father is always looking at them, and whatever anybody did to them, they're going to feel the wrath of God. But these things are backed scientifically. Right? So, yeah. These things are known. The modeling is there, and whether Christians can accept it or not, I can tell you this, governments have been preparing for it. It takes 40 years to prepare for something like this. What do you think they've been doing for the last 40 years?
They have.
You've heard the rumors and everything else.
You're right, and John Moore shares that with us from those meetings he had in Army intelligence at that great conference in Cincinnati. But let me just say this. Gravitation, Brock has just brought a statement in here. Gravitation X spots are showing up more often. Pilots are seeing them. Can you speak about that, Mike?
Oh boy, Pastor, to be honest with you, that's a long subject. Let me tell you why it's a long subject. Because gravity goes with electromagnetism and also goes with what people call portals. Not some fake portals that you read in a comic book or have seen on TV, but absolute portals. Portals that are very destructive. Portals that do something to the human mind. Right? And they are being spotted all over the place. And in fact, I'm glad he said that, because at high altitudes and in several different places of the earth, there are no-fly zones. These no-fly zones are being recategorized. Even right now, tonight, there are certain places you cannot take an aircraft or it will not fly, period. And they're having to designate more no-fly zones because of this anomaly Right? That's the key word, anomaly.
Is
Just
it
look up
like,
anomaly and aerodynamics, and you're going to find it. There are places where you cannot fly, where they cannot let satellites go over or anything else,
yeah,
because there is an anomaly, and it has to do with electromagnetism and gravity and some other things, right? These things are sporadic and spreading all over the face of the earth. They have grounded certain airports in several different parts of the earth, and there are no-fly zones, and people have died. If a plane, if it happens to form near an aircraft, that aircraft is going down. They can say battery loss or anything else. But if you use lithium, you're going to be prone to the effects of these things.
what?
Because lithium, that lithium generation of electrons can be interrupted, right, through magnetism of a very specific strength
Is that
and a
why
very
you're
specific
saying?
frequency.
Is that why you keep saying that planes are going to start falling out of the sky? And Mike, we've been watching, we've been studying. We study this every day, just like we study the earthquakes every day, just like the asteroids and everything else. And Brock and I have been doing this now for the last 9 months. And the numbers of little small planes falling out of the sky is increasing. The numbers are increasing. It's not because we got the internet access. They are increasing. The numbers are increasing. Mike, are big planes going to start falling soon?
Oh, yes, because in a small plane, gasoline planes and small jet engines, right, you have parts that are vulnerable to interruptions in electronics that are crucial, right, crucial for ignition. And so in the larger aircraft, you have computer control systems. They fly at higher altitudes, right, as this anomaly gets worse. They're going to find it at higher altitudes also. Right now, the ground effect it's some of these sporadic places are limited to a certain altitude of which when you have low level flights, that's where they fly, 10,000 below feet. But if you have commercial aircraft that are flying at 35,000, 40,000 feet, well, then you're going to have those effects up there too. The problem is they're going to give every excuse in the world until too many begin to fall. Then they're going to stop reporting on it, right? But Pastor, look at this. With all these disasters, with all these natural disasters and all these anomalies, they're responding to it. What does that mean? That means you're going to run out of money very quickly. They're going to have to start consolidating what they're doing. They're not going to be able to cover these damages. They're going to have to get that money from somewhere. The resources are going to have to come from somewhere. It's also going to cause a morale problem. It's also going to cause a deep aggravation and a troubling in the spirit of most people. And so these things are going to compile and increase. And I would say that these anomalies are a direct result. The increase of these anomalies are a direct result of the introduction of exotic particles entering into the earth, feeding into the core of the earth, right? Because we have something like a nuclear reaction taking place with these particles coming in. And then it's already, I believe, affecting biology, which also will increase. In our case, our minds. It's going to wreak havoc in our minds. It really will.
Mike, I can't thank you enough for coming on, being with us. I want to get you scheduled again right now. I'm looking at 2 weeks from tonight, which I think is the June the 6th, I believe. Is that possible? We can get you on that night.
Let me get that real quick. Let's see. Yeah, let's find Passport. Also, on June 6th is good. Send me a reminder halfway through because I need you to have a chart this time. I have the chart. I'm looking at the chart now, but we can't talk about that tonight. I want you to have the chart. So remind me halfway through.
So midday, June 6th, D-Day, I'm going to send you an email and say, send me the chart. And,
yes.
And folks, then I can show it to the people and you're going to speak about it?
Yes.
June 6th, guys, mark it on your calendars. Mike, you know what? God showed you in a dream and a vision to come to me and to work with me, and I want to tell you thank you so much because it's helping people to understand that the Bible, that what God said in His Word was going to come to pass is happening, and it's saving people's lives and their souls, and I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it too, Pastor Paul. We never know where we're going to end up, but one thing we do know is that whatever the Lord directs us to do is going to be useful for somebody. And I can see your job working out. We're not perfect. We don't have all the answers, but the Lord is doing something. He really is. He's doing something. So in that respect, the hard-headedness of me paid off, didn't it?
It sure has. Thank you so much for that, all right? And I'll see you 2 weeks from tonight, Lord willing, June 6th, with that new chart and a powerful show. I'll see you then.
I look forward to it.
All right.
God bless.
God bless. Folks, that's Mike from around the world.